Hello, welcome to Math with Beth, and we are going to look at finding x and y intercepts with lines and then actually using those 2 points to graph a line. So here's some examples that you could look at if you want to pause and kind of look at those. But I'm going to go ahead and start the first one. So to find the x-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for the y. To find the y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for the x, and that should make sense because the only way you'll be on the x-axis is if the y value is 0, because otherwise you would move above or below it. The only way you would ever hit the y-axis is if the x was 0, because otherwise you would have moved right or left and not be on it. So it should make sense why we always know that the other value is 0. So for this first one, if I want to find the x-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for the y, and then I'm going to solve. Divide by 2, x equals 2, which means I know one of the points on the graph is 2, 0. But now, if I want to find the y-intercept, I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to plug 0 in for the x. Remember, 2 times 0 is 0. So don't think that 2 is still there. This is 0. So really, I'm done. One mistake some people make is they put that x and that y together as a point, but that's not true. These are two totally separate points. 2, 0 is our x-intercept, and 0, 4 is the y. So if we plot 2, 0 for here, which makes sense, it's on the x, and 0, 4 is up here, which makes sense because it's on the y. And then I'll try my best to make a straight line here. There's your graph. So if you want to pause and try the next two, feel free. But then I would check and see how you did. So 0, whoops, I did it backwards. X minus 0 equals negative 4. So x equals negative 4. Remember, that's really a point, negative 4 comma 0. X is negative 4 when the y is 0. To find the y-intercept, I'm going to do the opposite. 0 minus y equals negative 4. Here's where some people mess up with the algebra. Make sure 0 minus y means that negative should still be with the y, which means you're not done yet until you get rid of it. So you can divide both sides by negative 1 to get your final answer. So when x was 0, the y was 4. So negative 4, 0 is our x, and 0, 4 is our y. Connect them and you have your line. So this is one way to graph lines. It's not the only way. You could also get it into y equals mx plus b form and graph that way using the y-intercept and the slope. So if you're confused because you've done it the other way, that is another correct way. So again, if I wanted to find the x-intercept, keeping the x, plugging in 0 for the y, 2 times 0 is 0, so I really am here now, but I need to get rid of the negative. So there's my x-intercept. For my y-intercept, plug in 0 for the x. Negative 0 is still just 0, so that's gone. So divide by 2 and y equals 3. Plot negative 6, 0, which unfortunately is off the chart here, and 0, 3. So something like that. Okay. We're going to do that one more time, but with graphs that are a little bit different. Okay. So if I wanted to find my x-intercept, I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing, and I'm going to plug in 0 for the y. It's just that this is a little different looking. So I would still divide by 3, and 0 is the x. So remember what that means. We plugged 0 in for the y and we ended up getting 0 for the x. So that is our x-intercept. If I now tried to do the y-intercept, I'm going to plug 0 in for the x, but again, I'm going to get 0. So you really can save yourself some trouble. If 0, 0 is the x-intercept, it will always be the y-intercept also. Because do you see that this point, 0, 0, hits the x and it hits the y? But just in case, especially when you're new to this and you're maybe a little unsure, doesn't hurt to just do both and make sure. So the problem though is that to graph the line, I normally have 2 points when I graph the x and y intercept, and this time I only have 1. So we do have to use another method, and there's lots of ways you can do this, but one way is to now just go ahead and use the slope. Since 3 is the slope, because the slope is always the number with the x if the y is by itself, just remember 3 really means 3 over 1. So that means up 3 and over 1. So from your first point, if you go up 3 over 1, now you have another point and you can connect them. Okay, so if you want to pause and try these two, they're going to be very similar. When I find the x-intercept, I'm plugging 0 in for y. When I divide by -2, I still get 0. So my x-intercept is 0, 0. And I know that that means my y-intercept is 2. So I'm going to go ahead and be lazy and just plot this one point and say it's my x and my y-intercept, which means I need to do something to find another point. So this time the slope is -2 over 1. So from that point, I'm going down 2 and over 1. If you're wondering why I'm going over 2 spots when I'm going over 1, it's because this graph just happens to be going by halves. So you just have to make sure you know what you're going by. Okay, last one. This time it is a little different because of the setup. So I'm just gonna be careful here. To find my x-intercept, this time I'm putting in 0 for y, which happens to be over here. But that just ended up being even easier than before. So again, I know my y-intercept is also 0, 0. But this time I need to be careful. -4 is not my slope. It's only my slope if it's in the form y equals mx plus b and the numbers with the x. So if I want to use the slope this time, I need to get that y by itself first. So if I do that, I end up having y by itself over here. I have an x over -4 over here, which is a little confusing. So make sure you get that that is the same as -1/4 times x, because there's really like a -1 on the top and a -4 on the bottom. So it's -1/4. So if I want to use my slope now, I just need to make sure I go down 1 and right 4. So this was just kind of a few special cases where it ended up a little different. Again, if it didn't tell you to find the x and y intercepts, you could have just graphed this by saying, oh, this is y equals mx plus b, which means the b, the y-intercept, must be 0. If nothing's here, it means 0. So you could have just started at 0 because of that, then gone up 3 over 1. So you have options when it's time to graph a line, but in this case, it wanted you to find the x and y intercepts first. So hope that helped. Let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.